unlocking investment opportunities in Africa's creative industry. As some of you may know, I started my professional life over 35 years ago in the creative sector as a radio program producer of the BBC World Service in Bush House in London. Since that start in August 1990, I've produced hundreds of news programs, commissioned and made feature and historical documentaries, as well as produced and presented music shows for radio and in-flight airline channels. I've also commissioned films and podcast series, all the time interviewing countless individuals across the creative sector. 20 years ago, in 2005, following the Blair Commission for Africa report, Our Common Interest, I was tasked with coordinating a major multi-stakeholder African regional consultation that led to the production of a framework and action plan for strengthening Africa's media. That same year, I also worked with several well-known African media leaders to convene a high-level consultation entitled Towards an African Al Jazeera, ? A decade later, in 2017, I was invited to serve on the International Advisory Board of the United Kingdom's Creative Industries Federation. And now here we are at the end of November 2025. I say all of that not to boast, but to give some context to my engagement on issues we'll be discussing today. For me, one thing is absolutely clear. The talent is there, the content producers are there, the markets and consumers are there, but sadly, there is still need for significant scale-up and investments in this space in Africa to enable the sector as a whole to perform much better within the regional and global context in the way that several elements of it, such as Afrobeats and Nollywood productions, are now performing. To be very clear today, we're not just talking about news media. We're talking about the entire creative industry space, including animation, broadcasting, print media, music, architecture, design, fashion, and film. And all of them remain critically undercapitalized. So there's a need for concrete action to increase financing at scale in this space. We're here this morning to discuss just that. Now, our running order over the next 90 minutes will be the following. First, we'll have a very short scene-setting video. Then we'll hear the presentation of the findings of the 2025 FT Strategies Scoping Study that was commissioned by the African Development Bank Group to assess the African media landscape. After that, we'll segue to a panel discussion to hear perspectives from our panel speakers on the study findings and also get their expert views on what they feel must really happen now to answer the matter at hand this morning, how to unlock investment opportunities in Africa's creative industry. So to get me started, I'd like to call up onto the stage and introduce our esteemed panelists this morning. Kadaria Ahmed, the Executive Director of Daria Media, Lubna Dajani, Founder and CEO of Alternate LLC, Patrick Koshoni, Creative Director, Maliki Living Limited, and George Chumasi, the founder of ABM. Please could you all join me on stage. And once they're seated, I'd like to have our event colleagues, production colleagues, to please screen the scene-setting video. Can we have the video, please?
The continent media and content creators landscape is experiencing a digital revolution. In 2025, Pan-African research shows that over 44% of Africans consume news daily via social media, and 41% use internet platforms for timely updates, an astonishing shift from legacy broadcast and print. Television and radio remain influential, with radio drawing a remarkable 65% regular listenership for daily news, showing the power of old and new working together. Meanwhile, print has declined to just 14% regular readers. Youth and mobile adoption are driving unparalleled demand for diverse, independent, and hyperlocal news. The rise of digital-first outlets and viral citizen journalism is reshaping the agenda, empowering young voices and building new opportunities for advertisers, creators, and investors. Africa's passion for sports is central to the content revolution. In 2025, the sports media market will surpass $2 billion in value, with streaming platforms and social video engagement exploding. NBA Africa's regionalized content, for example, has seen a 41% year-on-year spike and over 90 million views. YouTube and direct-to-consumer streaming are transforming how millions of fans experience live games, and pay TV, social video, and free online platforms combine for maximum exposure and new monetization models. These new habits, getting news and sports updates instantly, participating in online conversations, driving trends are fueling the next wave of digital content creation and commercial opportunity. Advertising, subscription, and influencer-driven models are converging. Investment, innovation, and digital infrastructure are key to sustaining Africa's leap into a global creative powerhouse.
Another captivating video there produced by my colleague Patrick. Next, we turn to Val Imparatore of FT Strategies, who is joining us via Zoom from London to make a presentation of the findings of the scoping study which we at the African Development Bank Group commissioned a few months ago. Over to you now, Val. Can we link up with Val, please? I was told he was connected. Here he is. Good morning, Val.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for having me in this session. It's an honor and a privilege. I unfortunately do not have I can't share my slides on the Zoom, so be waiting for technical support.
Colleagues, are we able to give Val the right to be able to share his screen? Thank you very much.
There we go. Thank you so much, and sorry for the delay. Thank you so much again for having me presenting the work that we've done in partnership with the African Development Bank. I'm Val Imparatore, an engagement manager at FT Strategies, the consulting arm of the Financial Times. For those of you that don't know what we do, since its creation, FT Strategies has helped over 1,000 media companies address long-term commercial and financial sustainability questions through a variety of initiatives, increasing revenue or unlocking new revenue streams and optimizing costs. Today, I'll be presenting the feasibility study we did in partnership with the African Development Bank with a vision to create an African Media Investment Fund. To run quickly through the agenda, I'm going to talk about the purpose of this feasibility study, then explain why this African Media Investment Fund is needed, how can media provide financial returns, which I'm sure is a question on a lot of people's mind, and our initial thinking behind how should the fund be structured, operated, and managed, and then we'll conclude with what are the next steps to make this fund a reality. Starting with what is the purpose of this feasibility study, we were commissioned by the African Development Bank to explore the opportunities and challenges associated with creating a sustainable and thriving creative sector and media ecosystem with a vision to create the African Media Investment Fund and a structure that can attract both stakeholders, strategic partnerships, media organizations, and be a catalyst for capital mobilization. As I mentioned, the goal was to initially explore how the media ecosystem is facing some of the new challenges, understand what the opportunities are in this sector, as well as the ability and the vision to strengthen the African's ability to share its own stories and successes on the global stage. We also have a link to how to create sustainable jobs, improve the skills, leverage the opportunities that digital transformation presents, especially with AI, and promote good governance. All of this with a vision to foster trust in the African media. And again, I'll say this a couple of times, when we say media, we mean a much broader ecosystem than just the news media, and includes other sectors and other ways of promoting Africa on the global stage and on the continental stage. I'll try to summarize the finding of the study in the next 8 minutes, but as I said, we started with the current state of the African media, risk profiles and requirement of potential investors, and then recommend the structures, governance, and operational strategies to make this fund a reality in the short term. So we start with why is an African media system actually needed? wanted to focus on media investment fund, because this is not a term we picked by chance. Media, we wanted to encompass, as I said, not just the news media, but all the other sectors that make media what it is. So that includes sports, entertainment, and so on. I wanted this fund to be focused on investment and promoting commercial and financial sustainability. In terms of our key takeaways from the ecosystem analysis that we ran, the African media is facing an increasingly complex and hard situation. We see movements in the digital ad revenue away from the media sector, a limited access to technology due primarily to the upfront cost of setup and the lack of skills, and a talent exodus to other sectors, as well as diminishing international aid. This creates a situation where a lot of the media companies are struggling or failing in sustaining their operation and in reaching new audiences. Despite all of these challenges, what we found in the study is there's a big opportunity to invest in the media. Africa, as a continent, has one of the most unique profiles of all the work we've done across the globe with the young and connecting population. We believe that by investing in the media sector will enable revenue diversification, will enable the delivery of new products that will serve this increasingly important audience and unlock new income streams. And finally, through the responsible use of technology and artificial intelligence, we can promote lean organizations that can run at very limited costs while delivering new products and new ways of engaging with the different audiences on the continent. To delve a little bit deeper into what are the opportunities that we found in the study, I think maybe it's not a surprise to most of you, digital transformation and artificial intelligence is one of the most important opportunities, with the ability to develop mobile-first content and understand how we use this technology to reduce the costs. Revenue diversification is another important business model to evolve beyond the traditional advertising-led media ecosystem into new streams that would ensure financial and editorial independence. In a separate study that we ran on media sustainability, the more sustainable media companies have about 4 significant revenue streams. Next, as I mentioned, is the idea of content diversification. This is a broad term to mean both the type of content that media can deliver, if we have the investments and we can unlock capital in the sector, but also how we reach the audience through new products. This year, especially, we've seen a lot of increase into audio and visual content and reaching the audience in the way that is most convenient and most fitting to them. And finally, talent retention, which I mentioned in the opening, as a way to create jobs that are attractive to the immense talent that is present on the continent. And finally, something that FD strategists believe very strongly is this idea of collaboration within the media ecosystem, as a lot of the challenges are more on the macro level, and creating something that can allow for knowledge, technology, and resource sharing within the media ecosystem and create a thriving sector. We see opportunities for investors as well in our analysis, and some of them revolve around wider economic impacts. So we see skill creation, job creation, and expertise development as one of the biggest impacts. Financial returns through this idea of a better market fit that allows the audience to be monetized more effectively, as well as reducing the cost and having more having stronger cost controls mechanism to ensure that we run the media sector with strict cost control. Finally, the last two are around creating investable environments. We found that a stronger media industry, which holds power to account, promotes good governance, it helps create an investable environment and reduce the perceived risk with investing. And finally, business reporting will be able to unlock some new stories and successes that a lot of times go hidden or missing in the narrative we have about the African continent.
had to say. I'd like to get your thoughts on, there's a lot of investments in the room at this forum. FT have done this work for us, but yet we still have to unlock the flow. So my first question is, we know that these creative industries are worth billions, yet they're undercapitalized. What, in your view, and this is a question for everyone on the panel, just briefly, what is, in your view, is the single biggest misconception that investors have, both African ones and globally, about investing in this space, in Africa's media and creative industries? Starting with you, Kadaria.
First of all, Max, I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity for all of us. It's not often that journalists such as myself and creatives get a chance to actually sit and speak to money people. So we are really grateful for this opportunity. I think the single biggest problem is that media, and of course we've defined what media is, we're not just talking journalism, but other forms of media, is that we're often seen as a social service and not a viable, economic engine. The creative sector in recent times has become a little bit more sexy, but still it is seen as this thing that is fun to do. And that is absolutely, of course, not correct. You heard in the first report the numbers of young Africans that are absolutely engaging with both news media but also other forms of media. So the demography is there, the hunger is there, both locally and digitally. I think the sectors have proven that there is a demand. The problem we have is that the value isn't residing on the continent. At the moment, the value of everything that we have, whether it's our creativity, whether it is our demography, all of it is sitting outside the continent, the TikToks of this world, the YouTubes, the Netflix. So we are not harnessing this value chain to be able to make returns to Africans who are involved in the sector. And that is a big problem. And so investors look at what we have on the continent and they're unable to see where they're getting their money back. And that's because we're not investing in foundational infrastructure. So for example, listening to the report by the FT, and I know this is a summary, it's possible that in the detail some of that is evident. I would have loved to see them talking about beyond investing in just content, but actually the infrastructure that is required to build value. And I don't want to take up too much time, so I think I'll just stop.
Yeah, like George, I mean, Kadaria has been at the coalface on the journalist, the content side. You've been on the business side of this. I mean, I first met you 25 years ago. You're an entrepreneur in this media space. What are your thoughts in response to the question? Why is there still this misconception?
Basically, I think it's about perception. The Judeo-Christian literature about Africa, which has pertained for about nearly all the literature about 1,000 years, has perceived Africa and Africans in a way which is less than human dignity in the past. The second is media has been a tool, a technology for rulership, both in colonial Africa and pre-colonial Africa. So that perception is ossified. So when you talk media, I remember once that there was a function in St. James in London, and I was talking to somebody about my work. And the guy said, "God blimey, why do you need to do this? Because there's the BBC." Right. That perception has been fueled to a very large extent by the works of V.S. Naipaul and to a very large, A Bend in the River, Congo, and then by Joseph Conrad, The Hearts of Darkness. So most people go to Oxford and Cambridge and the likes who drive the city of London, and media, have a perception that fundamentally Africa's poverty of mind, right, cannot be altered. For me, that's the most single major reason why. But in the 21st century, we don't have any negative stereotypes anymore. Technology has given us a chance to recalibrate. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. And Lubna, what are your initial thoughts on this, the single biggest misconception that investors, both African and global, still have about investing in this space in Africa?
First, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity and to be here and to speak as a technologist and as an African. My mother is Egyptian. I think the misconception is primarily because we are inheriting this old thinking that has been framed. I think the problem and the solution are one. Africa is being spoken for, is being misrepresented, it's being viewed as a charitable thing, it's a high risk, low returns, when in fact it is the most richest, most creative, colorful, beautiful place on earth. Thank you. So I think the problem, the solution is the fact that we need to speak, for Africa to speak for itself. And media is how we do it. Media is how we educate. And we need to educate the world before it speaks for us in the way that it needs to continue to dominate. And it's time for Africa to lead and represent humanity and lead us to a thriving future.
Thank you, Lubna. Now, Patrick, you've been investing as a creative in various parts of this ecosystem yourself for many years. What are your thoughts in response to this question?
Well, thank you, Max, for inviting me to this beautiful event. It's my first time having to talk to such an enlightened and moneyed crowd. My experience comes from my entrepreneurial objective, which is to use design and hospitality to create memorable experiences. I remember when I first started in 2012 along the lines of creating a private members lounge, which I operate in Lagos, called Miliki. And I sought the help of a British guy who was based in Johannesburg. He started off with slow in the city and slow at the airport, some interesting lounges. And when he finally came over to Lagos to check what I was doing, the most remarkable thing he said was, "This would always be Patrick's little gig, so it's not worth it." So I think the misconception is thinking that while culture is cool, hospitality and design and creativity is cool, it's too fragmented, it's too small, it's not scalable, exciting, impactful, but not scalable. And that's just my experience.
Thank you. Now, I want to address what's been proposed by the FT now and focus on how we move forward from these misconceptions. Now, based on your work and what you're doing, Kadari, as a media entrepreneur in Nigeria, how do you think such an African Media Investment Fund can be and should be structured in a way that it protects editorial independence and enables you to be able to function in a way that you can do what you want to do and no one can essentially touch you because you're financially sustainable? How could such a fund help?
So for sustainability, we need earnings, right? So you and I come from a background of what used to be called public service journalism. We spent decades in the BBC where government or license payers' money was funding what is considered good journalism that drives nation building, et cetera, et cetera. The problem we have, and I go back to sort of that perception, is that primarily there is this dichotomy. Either people want to see media as purely commercial, and when that happens, that sort of social public interest aspect of it is pushed to the background. So you see people funding a lot of entertainment, a lot of clickbait type of content, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you think about it as a social good, you then think it cannot make money, and therefore, you don't want to put money in it. And I'm saying that we've actually reached a stage in the development of the media where both things are possible. But in setting up a fund like this and sort of building a viable media that has been sort of scaled, there are a number of things we need to think about. First of all, you have to have a fund that puts the right kind of finance. The right kind of finance is the sort of finance that will build media that cannot be easily bullied. So we're talking about scale. You need to put the right kind of money, right? Because media that can be bullied is media that essentially governments cannot take advantage of. And we are entering an era, I believe, of strongman politics. The world is in a bit of trouble. And so more than ever, you need media that can actually hold power accountable while being able to pay for itself so that it is independent. So the fund has to be able to put together the right kind of finance at scale. That's number one. Number two, we need to start putting around the table governance structures that encourage a demarcation between that editorial independence that you're talking about and the money people. So the money people shouldn't be able to sort of force people to do their way. But you don't do it by knocking heads. You do it by ensuring that investors are sitting at the table with journalists, with media lawyers, with civil society, so that people that have knowledge of all of these sectors are sitting together, taking decisions on this new media that we're building that protects the funding, that protects what you're building without necessarily allowing one side to overcome the other, so that it is a win-win. And then you need protection, so some sort of legal fund that allows creators to be able to fight in case, because we're used to slap suits, intimidation from the police, harassment, online bullying, all sorts of things that people that do the kind of work I do experience. And it can be very distracting and take you away from what you're doing. So a fund like this needs to have some sort of protection built in for the creators. If I can just, sorry, I'm not used to speaking to money people, so your language is a little bit difficult for me. So I talked about the robust okay, so I've already, I think, talked about the need to invest in foundational things. And what I mean hereby is distribution platforms that keep value within the continent. You need to be able to enable people distribute, I think, continentally. So a creator or a media person in Lagos needs to be able to find a way to get people in Johannesburg to watch what they are doing, to be able to access this without necessarily going through the TikToks and the Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just leave it roughly at that, yeah.
But building on what Kalari has just said,
Yeah.
George, I know that you've given a lot of thought to the whole public-private partnership in the media space.
Yeah.
And for years, I'm coming to George now, we've seen that there's some tension between the public sector media and the need for commercial returns, and then the private sector, which is just going after clicks and revenue. For the media to really do its job, what kind of models should we be thinking through that are viable now?
I think the resolution, thankfully, lies in the evolution of new technology around spatial and internet-based technology, AI, and digital platforms. What that is doing concurrently in all worlds, yeah, and that's where the TikToks happen. They are not produced here, but we use it over here. So technology has made markets agnostic to political pressure, et cetera, et cetera. The reality right now is that, specific to your question, there's an opportunity to devise public interest media as a public utility, which is financially viable. And there's an opportunity as well to generate a creative economy that's diasporic, looking at Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, the Caribbean, and Africa. Some of those markets are far more mature than in Africa, to create a market which creates a sizable return on investment. The third reality is referring to IFC and Google's e-economy report 2020 November, which was released. This year, had government policy and the right infrastructure been put in place in Africa, the digital economy would have been worth 180 billion this year alone. They've projected by 2050, it'll be worth about 720 billion. So what is needed is entrepreneurial genius, right, to start the process. The fund aspect will come along because it's encouraged by entrepreneurial genius. It's not the other way around. It's not the bank that's going to drive media. It's entrepreneurs who have to persuade the bank to follow a specific model. Thanks.
The entrepreneurs are there, the geniuses in Africa are there, but we also know that systems have to be fit for purpose. Lubna, you're a systems expert, internationally recognized. You've also been in this space for many years. You worked with the likes of Viacom and so forth many years ago in the US. Looking at what was presented today, what you've heard from Kaderia, what you've heard from George, what are your thoughts? What's your guidance that you can give in terms of how one would structure this and what kind of, where we need to really put our energy now?
Well, we need to put our energies and investments, I think, in empowering the continent and the creators to express themselves, for it to be inclusive, for it to be non-extractive and not walled. It is important that we don't apply the technology and not invest in technologies that are creating more fakes and utilizing the technology to empower the creatives into ensuring that the infrastructure is not surveillance-based, that it's fact-based, that it empowers the youth and the people to speak and to be able to communicate our truth to the world. That's what I think. I think we need to ensure that we know what ethics really are and whose ethics are we deploying. And that we ensure that we weave that into the systems so that and my daughters are both creatives and artists, and I'd like to know that what we invest in will enable them to be creative and to not be exploited and worrying about where they're going to get their next meal while other large corporations, usually outside of here, are reaping the benefits and redirecting it for their use. So it's really important to remember our truth and that we are human first and let the creativity flow, but we cannot invest in what oppresses anymore. That's it.
Totally agree. Now Patrick, there's often a major gap between creativity and cool and cash. So investors sometimes shy. They'd rather put up a huge building, especially banks, where there's collateral, than invest in an idea or invest in cool. How, and at scale, based on your experience and where you are now in Lagos, where there's so much going on, what are the concrete revenue streams and the business mechanics of operations such as yours that are workable and are scalable?
Well, in terms of revenue, first, running my private memberships club, it's primarily subscription, and that is from initial subscriptions and renewals that make up over 50% of the revenue. F&B as well is another income stream, so you're selling food and drinks to your members and their guests, but to sell that you need the hospitality service, so the hospitality service itself is another proponent. Then you also have events, space hire. So you hire your spaces out to internally and externally as well. So to members and their guests who want to use the space for events, and to also external third parties who look at your space as a viable space for that aligns with what they're doing. So there's at least 25% of income comes from that as well. And lastly, it's something I had to come up with on my own in the absence of finance or investors. I'm glad to say that for the past 10 years, 12 years actually, Miliki has been self-funded. It's grown in all the normal KPIs in terms of revenue and all that. But I have not borrowed or sought capital from anyone. And last year it was put in the Financial Times of London, UK, as one of the 4 top private lounges or membership clubs to go to, and I find that quite rewarding. So the last thing that I had to do while I was learning on the job was how to create finance using my wits, basically. And so the last revenue stream is creating brand visibility for premium beverages, spirits within Miliki. So they adopt a lounge, so I offer them visibility. So instead of just slapping their logos everywhere, I Milikify it. I use my design language to incorporate it in such a way that it's still seen, but it's not overblown and it doesn't dominate the space because we have a vocabulary, a design vocabulary. And this is my biggest revenue stream at the moment. And I mean biggest in terms of its growth and its potential. I'm now finding out that I can fund an increase in my physical space just by offering this lounge adoption and brand visibility to these premium spirits. They're coming into Nigeria in huge numbers, and as we all know, Nigerians are quite happy with entertainment and enjoyment and all that, and they're finding a fantastic market. So places like mine are quite attractive to these premium spirit brands. In terms of mechanism, definitely you need property as an asset. So you need a building. You need to work with your HR. You need personnel. That's a huge aspect that you can't deliver your services without a competent team. You need tech. Apps, websites, booking systems. Those are the three major mechanisms that I've relied on to get to where I need to be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to share a little joke with, well, not joke, anecdote with people in the room. You know, there are many people here today who could have been on this panel, but I was told that the panel had to be restricted to quite a small number. So I want to go to the floor now and call on some of those individuals who could have been on this panel to get feedback on their thoughts on the questions posed and where we should be going. One of them is our VP, Solomon Quenu. Solomon, I'd like you to just give us some initial thoughts, please, on how you think, whether this proposed fund is fit for purpose, and then also your thoughts on how one actually, based on your long experience with IFC, before the bank, the work you were doing when you were on Wall Street, in this creative media space, and where we are now in Africa today, what your thoughts are in response to the question, how do we unlock the investment potentials in this space? Could someone please get a microphone to our VP, Solomon Quenu, who's just there. He's the tall gent, but he's seated right now. Solomon, I hope I haven't really exposed you. We want to hear from you. You're absolutely critical to this. Africa needs you, and we want your thoughts now, please. Please get a microphone to our VP. Kadire, you don't need, you're not moderating.
Thank you very much. So I know the discussion has been focused around the media fund, but let me share with you why the African Development Bank is interested in the whole creative industry space. 18 million people come into the workforce every year, for which we can only provide 3 million formal jobs. So we have 15 million youth. Some go into the informal economy with entrepreneurship. Now, we've also observed that some of this entrepreneurship is really in the digital economy and also the creative industry space. So for us, jobs, especially for youth and women, is our focus. And that is what has brought us around as an institution into the creative industry space. I'm not talking about me personally, but I can tell you that my daughter is a creative. I need to help create a job for her, or I need to help create a profession, a career for her. But that's not the motivation. The motivation, and George, good to see you. It's been a while. Okay. But this is really what's brought us around. But I think as George and Patrick mentioned, it's really been family and friends, individuals, entrepreneurship money, angel investors who have really funded the space. And so the big question is, how do we get institutional money into the space and to scale? Now, some people focus on the sexy side. Okay, nice films. Yeah, great. But if you dive deeper there's a makeup artist, there's a sound person, there's a lighting person. So there are serious jobs associated with this. So for us, it's not just the sexy side, but it's really the job side. But we need to actually support the content creation as well as distribution. Now, when I got into this industry first, the moment you make a film, you need to get it into the movie theater, and that's what determines the success of that film through the different revenue windows. Today, the theaters have been disintermediated. It's a rapidly evolving industry. So we are doing various studies. As Max has indicated, we hired FT Strategies to do a study based on the media side. We're doing an overall creative study looking at film, fashion, TV, sports as a business, everything, okay? And we've started to take some risks. So we're actually setting up a film fund, both ourselves and IFC, who typically wait for proposals to come to us, are co-developing a film fund with Ebony Life Media. And it's not to help just Mo Abudu and her films. The idea is that this will be market infrastructure to really support a broad base of film producers, not just in Nigeria, but also in South Africa, in East Africa, in North Africa, etc. And it's a $50 million fund, and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Fund, Investment Authority has also, decided to be a part. So we could say that we have 60% of the 50 million committed, but we need to find a way to bring, our further institutional money in. So my point is, we are all recognizing as well that this is a natural industry. I mean, look at Nollywood, without big institutional money, has actually been able to deliver. So now, let's imagine also what we can do with institutional money. So yes, we need to look at the profitability side. So some of the things that we're focusing on, I think, Ahmed, you mentioned it as well, the IP. We need to have IP protection because otherwise your library has no value. So we're looking at really all aspects. We're taking the time, but let's put it this way. The creative industries is here to stay. It's a natural industry. We have to better understand it, and we're going to invest in it. Thank you. Oh, two more things. Even in Nigeria, we've created what we call the Integrated Digital and Creative Enterprise Fund, $620 million that we've provided. And it's supposed to really support the creative industry, not only in terms of investments into companies, but investments into the infrastructure, like studios, okay? Also, training institutions like the Africa Film and Drama Arts from South Africa. We want to have some of those institutions here. I mean, I've been to their 3 campuses, and I've attempted to actually bring them to West Africa, where the production is the highest. So, for those of you in the space, we're looking at this seriously. It's new. We're going to do a lot of feasibility studies. We're going to be a little more gradual, but we're definitely going to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Solomon, for those positive and insightful comments. Can you please give the microphone to Solomon? Can you please give the microphone to Joe France? I wanted just to have Joe France at the back. He's based in between Sweden and Ghana. He knows the space very well. He's on the investment side. I think his comments, his insights will be very, very useful to this discussion today. Over to you, Joe. Maybe you can say a bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you for putting me on the spot. I am from Ghana. I am based in Sweden, and we have an outfit called Sabuni and Partners, where we have a stated ambition of getting capital from the Nordic countries to invest in Africa, primarily in food solutions, but also media and logistics and stuff like that. I think that there are a number of things that we need to do. And the media industry is evolving. evolving very rapidly. So the distribution platforms are also evolving. I'm sure within about 5 years' time from now, you'll certainly have 5G broadcasting using the digital terrestrial network. That alone will transform the industry. There are also other things happening. But essentially, you need to aggregate some of the smaller players on the continent and let them scale. So that's number one. And number two, you need to build the infrastructure and distribution platforms so that you can effectively distribute. So not to belabor the point that has been made so eloquently by the panelists and also by Solomon here, your VP, I think I would love to see within about 2 years that there is a fund in place that has probably somewhere around $500 million US, that has a target of return on investment, say 2 to 3x, and an exit of 7 years. That would probably lead you to maybe 5, 6, 7 big investments that will be replicated by others. And because once you do a thing like this, it will attract other players, and other players will replicate it, and you'd have some kind of a snowball effect. So, you know, for all the good things that has been said, I need to see some concrete action and some results. It's a very good idea, and it's an idea whose time is in. And so I think, you know, you guys need to put on the leadership shirt and the yellow shirt and be in front. I think once you do that, you'll attract a whole lot of private capital also to the fore. I mean, because if you look in other places, there are a lot of investment going into media. I think it's possible here. For Africa to reclaim its narrative, for Africa to be able to use the creatives in ensuring that the value base that we have is sustained, and for businesses to make money and create jobs, and for entrepreneurs to dare make those investments, I think we need to take a few steps, and one of those steps is actually the creation of a fund like this. And you need to have some very bold and remarkable people in front of that. Some of them are in this room, but African Development Bank needs to be in the leadership, in the pole position. So I would love to come back here in 2 years' time, be in a boardroom, and be able to bring along some Nordic investment to the table.
That'd be excellent.
Thank you.
Medasin and Tak, I think, as they say up in the north. Please bring the mic to the front here. We are in the Kingdom of Morocco, where a lot of innovative things are being done, even in this space. I'd like to hear now from Lamia Bassem, who can give us some insights and feedback on what she's heard and tell us what some of the great things that are being planned here in this space in the Kingdom of Morocco. Over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Max. Thank you. I will be doing it in French if it's no problem. So, merci beaucoup pour ce panel. Déjà, c'est un panel qui me parle et qui parle à toute l'équipe énormément. OK, sorry. Donc, mon intervention aujourd'hui en marge de ce panel, c'est plus un témoignage, parce que je travaille présentement sur un projet qui s'intègre parfaitement dans les industries culturelles et créatives. J'ai fait 15 ans dans les médias, et puis depuis là, quelques années, je travaille sur un projet que j'estime et qu'on estime transformateur. C'est un projet qui est le fruit de 5 ans de développement, 5 ans d'études et 5 ans de confrontation aux vrais challenges et réalités en fait du marché à plusieurs niveaux, au niveau d'écosystème, au niveau de partenaires, au niveau financier, investissement, etc. Tout ce qui a été dit est très pertinent et très complémentaire. Je vais me baser sur ce projet-là, Mota Film Village, parce qu'il a pris en compte tout ce que vous avez dit comme insight, et puis tout ce qui a été dit aussi suite à l'étude présentée par FT Strategies. L'idée, c'est il ne faut pas partir sur project by project, c'est pas projet par projet. L'idée notamment de MEV, c'est de partir sur un écosystème intégré. En fait, il faut pouvoir créer un écosystème qui va donner une plateforme qui va au-delà des médias, du cinéma, du film, etc., mais qui va créer tout un one-stop shop où on retrouvera de l'hospitalité, parce que ça va avec, on retrouvera de l'événement, on retrouvera du sport, on trouvera de la formation, parce qu'il faut aussi une montée en compétences au niveau de cette industrie-là. On trouvera une composante qui est indispensable, qui est la composante technologique. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, le secteur, il a besoin de ces leapfrogs technologiques pour pouvoir répondre aux standards internationaux et pouvoir nous permettre justement d'exporter nos contenus. Donc l'idée, c'est de se baser sur cette technologie-là, qui ne va pas remplacer l'humain évidemment, mais qui va l'aider à performer et à avoir un contenu meilleur, avec des standards meilleurs. On parle beaucoup de l'Afrique qui veut refaire son récit, mais on ne peut pas refaire ce récit-là si on n'a pas de vraies infrastructures intégrées chez nous, en fait, et qui sont financées par nos instruments propres. On ne peut pas le faire. C'est une combinaison, c'est une transition qui ne peut pas se faire autrement. On a eu la chance de parler à beaucoup de partenaires, beaucoup d'institutions, etc. Ce qu'on a remarqué, c'est qu'il y a la perception, comme vous avez dit, qui pose problème par rapport à ce secteur-là. On a senti qu'il y a une sensibilisation qui doit être faite par rapport au retour sur investissement sur cette industrie. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, si on prend l'exemple des plateformes de streaming, c'est des plateformes qui génèrent énormément d'argent et qui sont même plus rentables que n'importe quel autre investissement dans n'importe quel autre secteur. Donc il y a un prisme qui est très limité par rapport au potentiel réel de cette industrie-là de manière globale. Donc il y a ça, et puis je pense qu'il y a un travail aussi à faire sur les instruments financiers qui doivent être adaptés à cette industrie-là. Parce qu'on s'intègre rapidement dans des schémas classiques de projets qui sont déjà courants, en infra, pont, aéroport, etc. Alors que c'est une industrie qui est complètement différente, qui fonctionne différemment. Donc aujourd'hui, il y a vraiment une synergie qui doit se créer. Il y a une prise de conscience qui doit se créer parce qu'il y a un travail de structuration qui doit se faire aussi du côté des industries créatives et culturelles, notamment en pensant à des choses comme ce qu'on a fait nous au niveau de notre projet, à des écosystèmes intégrés qui couvrent toute la chaîne de valeur. Vous étiez en train de parler de la distribution tout à l'heure. Aujourd'hui, l'Afrique reste plus un pays d'accueil, malheureusement. Pour créer une vraie industrie, on a besoin d'avoir toute la chaîne de valeur, de l'après-prod, jusqu'à arriver à la distribution, qui est un vrai challenge, effectivement. Parce que quand on fait des contenus basés sur la technologie, à high quality, aux standards internationaux, on a besoin de les distribuer, on a besoin de les exporter. Ça nous permettra de raconter notre histoire et ça nous permettra d'être aussi un peu partout dans le monde. Si je peux, il y a un postulat qui est très important, je ne veux pas généraliser, mais il n'y a aucun pays développé qui s'est développé sans investir dans sa industrie créative et culturelle. La Corée du Sud, le dernier exemple, tout l'État et les acteurs privés se sont mobilisés pour mettre beaucoup d'argent. Ils ont compris qu'ils ne peuvent pas se positionner en laissant de côté ce pouvoir-là, parce que ce pouvoir-là, c'est un vrai soft power. C'est ce qui va nous permettre de nous positionner réellement, de raconter nos récits et d'être dans la cartographie mondiale, en fait. Voilà, merci beaucoup pour votre écoute.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Lami, for that. Now I want to turn back to the panel to take things forward a bit as well. You know, one of my favorite concepts is the Sankofa concept. I'm turning to you now, Kadaria, which is one of, you know, the bird facing backwards getting the egg. We have to go back and fetch and learn the lessons before we go forward. Now, you're both, Kadaria, you're both a journalist and also an actor and investor in Nollywood films and series. Now, basically, we talk a good game about Nollywood, but from where you now sit, what are the lessons of that Nollywood success story that were learned the hard way, which should inform us going forward that we do not want to repeat in order to, as we inform and the design of this new media investment fund? What are the lessons from Nollywood, the good, the bad, and the ugly that we need to take on board now?
So Nollywood, I think, innovation under constraint, being nimble, you know, the ability to move very fast, and to understand your audiences. Those are the sort of things that we should be learning. Obviously, the things to avoid, you don't want the sort of exploitative practices that existed, weak IP protection. You don't want a lack of investment in crew, people, artists, and also production infrastructure. Nollywood has changed a lot over the last 10 years. And part of that change has been driven actually by distribution and streaming platforms like Netflix, not like Prime, etc., etc. So the money that has come into Nollywood has enabled people who sort of gone out to actually, we also have education. So there's a lot of people who've actually gone to study film and all of that, which is why it's interesting to hear Solomon talking about training academies. And so this is why I said that there is some foundational investments. Because when you talk to investors, sometimes they think all you're saying is bring money, let's put it into creating content. And actually, the media business is like every other business. It's like construction or energy, in the sense that it needs some foundational work done in order to sort of scale up. And it's the same thing with media. If we start thinking about media in that way, then you start thinking about the sort of investments you need to make that are not necessarily in content. Not that there's anything wrong with producing content, but putting together the integrated ecosystem that she's talking about entails actually building some foundational stuff. I now borrow money for my media business in 2 digits, right? So imagine, I don't work in FCMGs. I don't produce products that I'm not selling salt like Dangote, where everybody goes in and the money is just flowing. But I'm borrowing at the same sort of rates that businesses like that are borrowing. I'm being forced into the same pipeline as someone who is trying to build, let's say, an energy infrastructure. Or I might be needing, I don't know, $2 million, $3 million. But the pipeline that I'm expected to walk through is one where people borrow 100 million, for example, to build something in what might be considered the real economy. And so there is a lot of thinking that needs to go into designing the sort of financing. So it's not just that we need financing, we need a specific type of financing that takes into account the peculiarities of the industry. And I understand that because it's fairly new, people don't get it. But that is where investors perhaps need to also spend a little bit of time, either getting people who understand the industry and then teaching them the financial language. As you can see, I'm struggling with the lingo because financial lingo is a little bit confusing. But the idea is to find creatives who understand the industry and then teach them about finance so that they can actually put hybrid systems. Maybe it is microequity. Maybe it is how to take IP and turn it, into assets, because they're not, our assets are not tangible, they're the intangibles. How do you do all that so that you give investors some sort of comfort that when they give us money, we're going to be able to make returns on those investments? I think those are sort of the conversations that need to happen. This is what the fund needs to look at.
Thank you. And I see that Victor Oludokun has raised his hand, so please give the mic to Victor. And then there's a colleague behind next, and then we'll come back to the panel.
I just want to say this has been an incredibly informative session, and I want to say well done to the bank as well as FT on putting this review together. It'll be interesting to see the full report if that's available. Roughly 18 months ago, 20 months ago, Tyler Perry was going to launch an $800 million expansion of his studio in Atlanta. We call it Hollywood East. Just 5 days to the launch, he pulled the expansion. It's not happening. And the reason is very simple. He and his co-investors wanted to see what the impact of AI was going to be on the industry. Now, ChatGPT AI is in its 4th iteration right now. And the advances that we've seen between 1 and 4 have been incredible. 5 and 6 are already in the making. And right now, many of us have already seen film clips. I saw one from Nigeria recently. It was a sci-fi movie. Everything, the script, the actors, the sound effects, the music was produced by AI. This being the case, my question to the panelists is, what challenges and what opportunities do you see within the space, given the prevalence, the disruptive and transformative role of AI in the world today? Number one. Number two, there are 6 companies in the world that dominate half of the world's film and TV content. 6. It's Comcast, Disney, Warner Bros., Discovery, Netflix, Amazon, and Paramount Global. What they've done, and we're talking globally, across the world, and what they've been able to do is bring the best of money, the best of technology, the best of ideas, and the best of people together. But in Africa, most times with every kind of investment, the business models are me, myself, and I. We do not collaborate properly. What are you intending to do to replicate this global model that has allowed these behemoths to consolidate and to control the content that we see globally? So I'll just leave you with that thought and also with that question. Thank you very much.
Excellent question. Before we go to the next colleague, can I just have some response, please, from George and Lubna, and then we'll come to you. And we can get the mic to the lady behind here. So George first on the AI related, and then Lubna on what regarding the working together. Yeah, George, please.
Okay, I think for Africa, AI is a massive opportunity, fundamentally because the industry is lacking behind in skills orientation and also in the capacity to compete on a global level. But I'd boldly like to say, look at what Afrobeats has done. African content will rock the world. Hollywood is great and all, but Africa's content is rich. I've been in this industry for 42 years. I've raised money from friends and family and from everywhere else, and I ended up doing R&D for the past 20 years, right? Because I realized that Africa's misrepresentation, right, in technology and everywhere else is deliberate. It's a deliberate ecosystem, the Washington Consensus, I could say that briefly, or the Bretton Woods institutions to keep Africa down. Now, technology has liberated us. And why this is good is that investors will always chase money, right? So I see AI with its ethical constraints as an opportunity. What we need is a human center for the effective appropriation of intelligence driven by Africans. So the ethical, cultural, algorithmic proposition is redefined to suit the African context. I mean, that's number one. Number two, we need a trade organization, not AUB and all of that. A trade organization that looks at 3 things. How big is the industry? So for a bank like AFDB, I'll boldly say again, we should look at an industry worth $1 trillion in the next 10 years. And I'm talking about Brazil, I'm talking about Colombia, I'm talking about the whole ecosystem, animation, content, $1 trillion. What do we need? A fund of 60 billion. I say this with the greatest respect for FT Strategies, right? They're a phenomenal company, but AFDB and Afrexim Bank must define what a fund for Africa should be. End of story. Because the reality is that, listening to the lady from Morocco, right? We need a value chain proposition driven by Africans. I had never been to Morocco before, but the ambassador in Ghana had been compelling me and the work I do, I'll talk about the last iteration, to look at Morocco. Now, coming here, understand why. We have whatever it takes. So the bank needs to, I know with Solomon, with you, and with what George Solomon said, and what I've learned from the Afrexim Bank, what we need is a consensus-building approach based on intellectual knowledge capital and the political will to convince our leaders. The leaders who, in this instance, are prepared to put their goodwill on board. President Kufuor, I think President Mahama, I believe President Obasanjo, they're African leaders who come on board. The King of Morocco is a friend to Ghana, right? They've got a sovereign fund. So it's got to be a working relationship. Yes, I was talking to Solomon, brilliant ideas. It's worked at BBC. We've got the knowledge capital. So we've got to be bold. 100 million is good for this, but 100 million is what a company in New York does to do pilots for friends, right? So the thinking orientation has to be, the bank has to facilitate AI and the creative economy. The money will come. That's why Lubna is here. She represents a family fund with trillions of dollars. So we've got to think bold. We've got to think about re-strategizing Morocco, Ghana, Namibia. We've got to work together right now. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Now, Lubna, he mentioned your name. He mentioned trillions of dollars.
I don't know.
Over to you. Not putting you on the spot, but he already has.
Where do I start? You know, I'm a very direct person usually, and not necessarily always politically correct. I think we need, first of all, I don't think AI is a tool, just like all other technology, and AI doesn't come by itself. It comes with a stack. AI, immersive, quantum, exoskeleton. It's a combination. It's a stack. And it is learning from us. The difference about AI and other investments is that AI is computational intelligence. It is not just a tool that only can do what you use it for. It is learning from us. And this is where the opportunity and the danger. If it continues to learn from what we have been doing traditionally, then where do you think we're going to be left as humans? We are finished, people. Done. Okay, we've outperformed ourselves. We've outsmarted ourselves. Our technology has the capacity, and we are continuing to invest so much more into another bubble. And it's not the technology that's the bubble. It's our thinking. It's our greed. We are misplacing emphasis on how we measure value. Okay? And this is not about Africa for me, because I think, to me, Africa is the heart of humanity. It's the center of the earth. So for me, if there's any hope as a mother for my children, and I have many, many children, I feel like, I always say I'm more like a man. I have more children than I know. But it's critical that we question ourselves about our own integrity and our own intentions. What is money? Money is a container. It's a wrapper. It's like it's like a candy bar, and we are so desperately fighting for that wrapper, and the sweets inside are being trampled. It's the quality of life that we need to value. It's who we are as a humanity. We are different in color and tone only because we are adapting to the environment. It has nothing to do, and there's no royal that has a different blood than the lowest, the poorest person. We need to untether economies from poverty at the bottom to protect. There is no reason for a ceiling, but there surely is no reason for a bottom. This is why we've been working with technology and the things that we've built in science, not to further oppress. So if we talk about investment, we need to realize this is not Silicon Valley, and we need to look at what we've done and learn from it. And we need to remove ourselves. It's not about us and them, and we have to be better than them. It's us and them as we are humans. We are caring, compassionate people. We compete to complete each other rather than beat each other, to accumulating something that at any moment we can decide to shift its value, and then all of a sudden it crumbles. It means it's meaningless. What is meaningful is love. What is meaningful is compassion. What is meaningful is to be joyful. And it's really very, very critical to understand that we need to change the narrative, but for society, for humanity, at scale. And this is the continent to do it. If we don't do it here, sayonara, go have a party, it's over. Seriously, we are investing. Do you know that we've 1,200% increase in AI for defense than in 1 year? Okay, maybe that's in the States, but I'm sure, I guarantee you it's globally. While education, life sciences, everything else is starving for capital. So we need to have patient and conscious capital. That's why I moved into, I'm thinking, Where are we going to get that? It has to be family. It's capital that is patient and capital that cares about legacy, and this is the time to change it.
And Lubia, I know that
So I apologize for getting...
we love your passion, thank you. I know you're talking to some of those people. You talk to some of that money. So when we come for the final round, I want to know what it is, what narrative is needed to get some of that passion translated into those who have the money so it's invested in this space. I'll come back to you later.
But we just have to redefine returns.
Yes.
The meaning of returns.
Exactly.
I'll leave
So
it. I'm sorry.
let's just go.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just say something
But just,
very quickly?
just very briefly, because we want to go to the colleague who's on the second row.
It's just that I feel that news media is not really getting a look in this conversation. And news media is actually how you push back against some of the things that Lubna is talking about. Because a lot of people, like we said, is sexy, entertainment, Nollywood, all of that. But actually, journalism done properly is what is required in today's world to be able to reshape some of those narratives.
Yeah.
And the returns are actually, I think it can be profitable in terms of money, but actually the social capital you get out of it, you build societies that are functional and where therefore businesses can thrive, you fight poverty, etc., etc. So it is I almost feel like, we are being turned into sort of zombies with entertainment, and many people are excited about entertainment. But to actually do the things we need to do, AI tool important, even in journalism you use it, but there's a need to also step back and see what it's also doing for misinformation, disinformation. Look at Sudan, look at Nigeria.
I totally agree with you, but for journalism to be independent, it must be financially independent.
And it can
Hence
be.
this discussion.
Yes.
Let's go to the floor and then we'll come back to final comments from the panel, please. Oh, we only have one mic. Thank you, Solomon, for roving around. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Raja. I'm working for Finland. And then this is why I want to talk about the gaming industry in Africa, because I haven't heard so much about it. I kind of have an investor brief, so I hope it will wake up some creative minds here as well. Because gaming industry is also about creativity. And as today, the creativity in gaming industry for Africa is just actually fueled by the other regions, not for Africa. We do have some countries actually that are leading, among them South Africa, for example, but I just want to talk also about the market share. So the current market share actually is, the size is 2.12 billion. 2.12 billion, and it's projected to be $5.72 billion by 2030. So in less than 10 years, it will be more than double. It's one of the fastest globally. The key drivers for those performance, the mobile gaming performance is 80 to 90% of revenue from mobile gaming, which is a huge gap that we are not seizing. And that's like thanks to affordable smartphones and data plans. In terms of demographics, 60% of Africa population is under 25, and we have 349 million gamers in 2024. The leading markets in our region, Egypt, with $368 million of revenue and plus 20 million of gamers. The second leading one is South Africa with $794 million revenue and a strong esports ecosystem. Nigeria, again, $528 million revenue, fastest growth. Emerging trends, so esport expansions, we see that with the FIFA gaming and NBA and all those collective sports. The cloud gaming infrastructure also is enabling that growth, and the local content. In local content, we do have some studios. So in terms of investment opportunity, we talk about mobile gaming platforms. It also goes in pairs with the streaming platforms in general for the film industry, for example. The esports infrastructure, the sponsorships, the local game development studios, and the cloud gaming studios. I'm a parent of 2 boys, so I know this is kind of alarming, but this is a source of revenue that is just passing through on top of us, like in our clouds, actually, if I can put it like that. So it's very important also to see what we can enable through this, and that also amplify the ecosystem and the value chain, because this englobes also the cloud system, the cybersecurity, because we're talking about youngs as well, but also trying to actually attract the hyperscalers. So that's also something very important for us, and developing the network and the infrastructures. So that was just more a statement, but I wanted to know also what the panel is thinking about the gaming industry in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And before we come to our final round of questions and comments from the panel, hand is raised at the back. The esteemed Patrick Smith, the editor of Africa Report and Africa Confidential newsletter, would like to make a comment or pose a question. I hope the question isn't going to put people on the spot, Patrick.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'll definitely try to do that, Max. Absolutely brilliant panel, and wonderful to be here with so many delegations from around the continent. I wanted to take you all up on what Kadria had mentioned about public service broadcasting. I sincerely hope it isn't dead, but we obviously need to revitalize it. I'm thinking, what ideas have you got for using the dominant themes in public service broadcasting, such as the green economy, the transition to sustainable energy across the continent, the critical issues of health and cultural development? To what extent can you see the exploitation of critical minerals was mentioned yesterday, and the way that this opportunity is in danger of being lost because of the lack of investment in refining and developing the capacity to use these as part of the green transition on the continent? To what extent do you think you can find commercial models to use the public service ethos to expand the media for these sort of vital developmental issues that the African Development Bank has worked on so hard? There must be some way of reaching the population, because right now, as I said, the dependence on the international dimension on this, the international media, is just not producing the information and the detail on the ground that we need from reporting networks across Africa. So could we have some ideas for revitalizing public service media for Africa in a commercial vein that will actually produce returns for investors, but also serve the population?
Thank you very much, Patrick. George, this is really up your street, as we would say. So let's hear from George, and then Kadria, and then any other panelists want to chip in on that. And after that, we'll go to my final question for the whole panel. George, over to you.
Yes, thanks for a very brilliant question, Patrick. Fundamentally, public interest media, as you'll agree, is subject to definition by territory. So if you look at the reality of automated journalism, which AI will produce, right, the remit that is left within contextualizing public interest media is a solutions-based approach. And that allows for technology which is chargeable to be made possible. So a very simple model, we've developed it in very sophisticated ways, but a simple model is, look at Echo and Alexa. If you've got a system that's got about 60,000 skills, say covering entrepreneurial innovation, education, broad, and healthcare, as 3 examples, where the guy who cannot speak any English or French, but is used local language, can speak to a machine which is affordable, OEM produced China, right? Using the same Amazon white label technology with AI language modeling, speaking Swahili, etc., right? Paying something like $2 a month. And you've got, and what it does is that it becomes a public utility. So public interest media is no longer the peripheral wasteland for finance that it has been to date in Africa. So in that context, technology will allow you to create a subscriber-based model, which is affordable for many. And the value that is generated, which is improving the knowledge base in today's knowledge economy, right, creates for a model that is sustainable.
Thank you, George. Kadaria, any brief comments on that? Because then we've only a few minutes left.
Yeah, I actually think that at the heart of the problems that Africa faces, including some of the risks that investors, are averse to, is an issue of governance. It is the way the continent is currently structured with the people who are in charge. And so I like the idea of solutions journalism and being able to allow regular people to do certain things and to learn how to look after themselves. But we must continue to be able to hold power accountable. If we don't, then even the investments that people like this in this room are making are limited. And I think we need to be able to convince investors that it is in their interest to support the sort of journalism that enables us build societies that thrive and grow where poverty is history, because then their businesses expand. How do you do it on a practical level on a continent like this? I'm a big believer in collaboration. We need to start building media across the continent, not necessarily one big, massive organization, but networks that allow for collaboration across borders, right? So that is one of those things. I think we can also set up hubs, regional hubs, where you sort of have production facilities, you can share legal knowledge, you can talk to people that do continent-wide distribution, those sort of things. I think those are the sort of things that a fund like this can actually enable. And I think if you look at, say, mining, for example, and yesterday, for example, I was at the mining thing, we have conflicts across the continent now driven by, mineral resources. Zamfara, my state, has become one of those places now where mining of gold is fueling conflict. And yet, there are investors who are going in there and putting money into it. And we need to be able to let them know they can still put money into it, but without people dying, and so the returns are higher. Yeah. What else are they investing in that is sort of securing that value chain for everybody? I'm not somebody who believes that somebody has to suffer for another person to do well. I think we can all do well.
I totally agree. We only have 4 minutes left, and I'm being not pressured, but told to keep this show on the road, as they say. So we're going to go last minute for each person on the panel. The question I have is this. If we are to get this fund started, and at the scale that you think is needed, what tangible changes in their day-to-day lives should both African creators and journalists feel, and also those of us who are consuming those, whatever they produce? Starting with you, Patrick, and then to Lubna, and then to George, and then to Kadaria, and then we wrap up. Patrick.
First of all, capital, access to capital. It shouldn't be an uphill task. We should have accelerators where people can apply online or put in the revenue streams and qualify immediately for loans, just like we get offers for low-rate loans based on our personal income. So businesses should be able to put figures into an accelerator or an online system and apply for a loan and get it at a single digit. That's the first thing I would say. It works perfectly for me. I tried to access a loan last month, and I was given an interest rate of 36%. So I just told the bank, I might as well just put your uniform on and be working for you directly. There's no need for me to go through any other channel. So the access to capital should be easier and should be democratic. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for your time here today. Lubna, over to you.
Wow, I have so much more to say, but that's okay. I mean, I think I just want to respond to the gaming. I think gaming is very important. It is one of the rises. It has a bigger market share than anyone can imagine. Music, but not to get into that. Gaming is game theory and game mechanics is a way to influence media. I feel infrastructure is very critical. We need a layer of energy, communications, and education is what I feel is essential. And to me, media is how we educate. But for media to be, and it's through media that we influence minds globally, because that's how we access, this is how we access the information. You call it information, you call it data, it's all the same. Not technically, but you know what I mean. So the network needs to be sovereign, as in not to be bullied or hijacked for someone else's objectives, okay? And the individuals need to be, not as a creator, they need to have to be able to freely express rather than worry about where they're getting their next meal or where they're going to sleep. Mm-hmm. So there is so much more to discuss, but we need to ensure that we are not exploitative or extractive or oppressive. We need to enable people to create, and it is really critical that we educate the world on the truth of humanity, and this is the chance for us to do it through Africa, because we need a new infrastructure. We have so much content to share and so much to teach. It is not that we need to learn, it is that we need to teach. There's so much innovation here that needs to be invested in if we can only discover it. It is the long tail of innovation, and this is the highest return any investor could ever wish for.
Thank you, Lubna. We will continue the discussion, but just not in this panel session.
Yeah,
George, over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Basically, I'm very encouraged by listening to everyone. But there's a fundamental existentialist reality, right? So by 2050, 1 in every 5 human beings on Earth will be African, right? New York Times did a publication. The world's labor force, in the main, automated or not, will be African. Africa does matter, but there's a danger as well. Africa will get colonized by technology if we do not recalibrate. It's not like there's a choice. Every institution has to be concerned, right? And we need a specific pilot, right, to start this process now. And the reason for that, I just want to mention the reason. Elon Musk is not an accident of nature. His grandfather, a guy called Joshua Halperman, started with a guy called Howard Scott, Technocracy Incorporated, Technocracy movement in the 30s, to where technocracy would swallow bureaucracy and democracy. It is happening. It's not like it will happen. Project 2025 is a reality. The one you read, Turner's Diary by William Luther Pierce, the guy from the south of the US, his philosophy has shaped Project 2025. This guy who advises Donald Trump, forgotten his name, he used to run the Beardbat, the online thing. Steve Bannon. There's a book I read, The Camp of Saints by Jean Raspail, right? What is happening, the right-wing movement in the West is a reality, right? Fortunately, there's China, there's Japan, there's Asia. Africa needs to reposition itself. And the only way it's got to do that is for institutions to come together right now, create a value chain, right? And create a scalable proposition now. Otherwise, in 2030, 2050, that young African you talk about will be enslaved.
Hopefully not. Thank you very much for your time, George. Kaderia, the last word on the panel goes to you.
Okay, so I think the question was if the fund were to come into being, what would be different? A few people have said so, cheaper finance, creatives shouldn't have to choose between a brilliant idea and starvation. We should be able to have access to micro-equity, revenue-sharing finance with a little bit of dignity. We should own our own IPs. We should have regional distribution pathways that keep value in the continent, and we should feel protected legally, financially, and creatively. Let me just say finally that the problem of a lack of finance in media is not just an economic problem. It is a cultural and also a problem for democracy. And I think that is really what George was sort of alluding to just now. And if we do not solve that problem, The media industry is not just any other industry. It actually underpins literally everything that we do. I'm just really surprised people don't see it that way. The stories we tell ourselves, the values we teach our children, our ability to project ourselves and decide who we want to be, all of that is media. And if we don't get it right, he's absolutely right. African kids are going to be slaves in another 30 years.
I totally agree. So
Thank you
very much. I started at the beginning mentioning how long I've been involved in this. It's now nearly 20, 25 years. The theme of this session was how to unlock investment opportunities in Africa's creative industry. I just pray that in 20 years' time, I'm still not having this discussion. This panel has given us some great insights, you from the floor also. Thank you so much for joining us today, and let's just keep the flame alive in taking this agenda forward. Thank you. Thank you very much. Patrick.